ripple effect.
What's up? Another Patreon podcast. I'm your host, Rants, also known as Rants. And today, we don't know who's going to show up. I was going to say today we have a guest, but we never know who's going to show up. The Patreon podcast, for people who are new to the show or don't know what they are, once a month, I get together with my Patreon supporters. So everybody who supports me on Patreon, I send them the Zoom link. They basically come on the call, we hang out for an hour, we chat, we connect, and it's a blast, and we catch up on stuff. So it's a way of giving back to my Patreon supporters, because truly from the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate them contributing, regardless how much it is every month. And it's a small perk for helping out. And if you want to figure out all the ways you can support the Ripple Effect podcast, go on rickyvrans.com or the Ripple Effect podcast.com, and you can click support, and you'll find my Patreon page, you'll find my merch store, you'll find my PayPal. If you want to donate, you'll also find my crypto wallet. So plenty of different ways to support the show. And I think I have some people waiting in the room, so I'll keep this intro short, and I'll get right to the podcast with the Patreon supporters. Let's see who we have today hanging out. Let's do this. So Adam from Deborah Gets Red Pilled is with us, and then Patrick. What's up, Adam?
What's going on, Ricky?
How you been, bud?
Good, man. After complaining about not being able to make it on a weeknight because I'm on the West Coast.
That's
here.
exactly what I was thinking when I saw your name. I'm like,
Yeah.
The one guy I didn't expect to show up is the first one here. So that was pretty funny. How have things been? I've been trying to keep up with your podcast, and are you gonna? Well, I mean, what's your I guess for your plans for 2022?
I'm gonna keep everything going. I'm gonna do solo shows with Deborah every once in a while. Just have conversations with her, not do any big conspiracy stuff. And then I'm gonna bring her on for fun stuff like cryptids and supernatural stuff. And then I'm going to do hardcore conspiracy stuff with my co-host, Chud X, and we're calling that show Into the Apocalypse. And then I'm doing kind of a homesteading show with my wife, because we got some land out here. We're going to try to start homesteading. So we're doing all the self-sufficiency stuff. That one's called Chicken Tenders.
And is that all going to be on your same RSS feed of Deborah Gets Red Pilled?
Yeah, for now.
Yeah, that's not a bad move, because you have all those followers and you already have that audience, so they get your new projects. So yeah, that's not a bad deal at all. I know I got pretty close to I know you had a emotional podcast with Deborah not too long ago. I think I probably paused it right before it got, I think I heard there were some tears in that one. But it's funny, because I recently talked to a few people. I don't know if it was, I record so many shows, sometimes I forget what was recorded or what was privately said, but I remember talking about how Deborah and what, your experiment, I mean, it kind of is a experiment, what you did with Deborah Gets Red Pilled, and the whole concept, how it, for some people, it makes you rethink if you can ever get through to somebody. You'd figure that with all the conversations and hours and really just all the efforts and energy invested in trying to get through to her, and I think you've definitely made a lot of progress, but it still seems like there's a hurdle that she just won't go over. And I mean, how has that affected you in the way you look at possibly getting through to people?
It was hard, because all that stuff went down, and pretty much it came down to, like, she just thought that I told her I was going to lose my job, and like her solution to it was to get vaccinated, and then we had a big blowout, and kind of decided to keep going. And then some stuff went down on Thanksgiving, and my wife went down to their place in the Bay Area, and they tried to like make my wife COVID test, she said no. And I was pissed off at that because she didn't stand up for my wife. And but I kind of came to the conclusion that I have gotten through to her. It's just I think there's some other stuff going on, some like people pleasing stuff and some codependency issues, and that was a blockage as well. But I did an episode with her on Saturday night, and I think she turned a little bit of a corner, just based on me constantly telling her stuff. And then she got an email. She's been getting emails from like venues in San Francisco that are saying that you need to have the booster to be able to go there. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I've been telling you is going to happen for a long time. And I think like actually like the mixture of hearing it from me and then getting it straight from the horse's mouth like made her realize that something's going on.
Yeah, it's you never know what thing or conversation or what might just be the thing that completely shatters somebody's worldview, and that's why I think, as difficult as it is for us sometimes to talk to somebody who has drastically different points of views, I think it can be beneficial. Can it be a complete waste of time sometimes? Absolutely. There's going to be some people that you're just going to be frustrated with, and you're just like, wow, why am I putting in so much energy to try to help this person see things from a different perspective or from my perspective when they don't want to put in any effort to try to see things from my perspective, and I might never get through to them. But there's been plenty of people who really, like, out of nowhere, I've talked to, that I'm just like, wait, like, you're saying something that sounds like you agree with me. Like, where did this come from? Because last time we chatted, you were completely resisting. So yeah, I think we're all contributing a little bit, and it's frustrating, but I think it's I mean, what you did with Deborah was absolutely awesome. I mean, that show, the concept was, I mean, think about it. There's like 2 million podcasts in the world, and you came up with a concept that I'm not aware of has been done before. That's
Yeah.
alone is pretty awesome.
Yeah. I told Sam that I was going to do it, and then he did his Brian Callen thing. So I think I influenced him to do that one.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Yeah.
I believe you. That's I mean, it probably isn't coincidental, this whole, and some of his shows that he did with like Jason Burmis and stuff very much remind me of Deborah Gets Red Pilled. I'm like, this is literally just Deborah Gets Red Pilled with comedians. This is
Yeah.
same type of idea.
Yeah.
Pat, this is your first. Is this your first time? You look familiar for some reason.
I've come in once before a while ago. I think maybe close to a year ago. I don't know. At the time, I was living at my grandma's house because we were trying to save money, and I ended up moving out because she was like very, very deeply blue pilled. And I would just like hear her talking to her friends on the phone about me and like my girlfriend and stuff. I'm just like, okay, well, like I don't like have to live here. I can like go live somewhere else. But I tried to like bring some stuff up to her. And I like showed her that randomized control trial of the mass study. Like I don't like probably over a year and a half ago at this point. And it's like now we're at the part of the pandemic where it's like, oh yeah, cloth masks don't work. It's like, who could have like guessed that, And so I was just like, I was over at her house the other day, and she was talking about her friend. She's boosted, and she like, I can't go home to see my parents because like I think I have to be vaccinated to go there. So I'm kind of in limbo at that, like in that regard. And like my grandma was just there visiting my parents and stuff, but like I can go over to my grandma's house, which I feel like is a little bit reassuring that she's like, well, I was over there and she's like, like family's important, family's family, and like that kind of stuff. I don't know, just making it seem like I was definitely welcome to be there. But she was talking about a friend of hers who she had, and she was like, yeah, she wants me to get a COVID test before I go see her. My grandma's like super old, and her friend, I don't know what's up with her friend, but she's like, yeah, she wants me to get a COVID test before going to see her. Isn't that crazy? And I'm like, well, vaccinated people are getting COVID. So like, if you like, if that's what you believe, that like you need a test, then like, no, it's not crazy that you also have to get a test. She's like, yeah, I guess I see that. So I don't know. I feel like I'm getting through to her a little bit, but
Let's start a podcast. Grandma gets red pilled.
yeah. Yeah, maybe. I am gonna start a podcast though, hopefully this week, with my girlfriend. We're we're like trying to make matrix exiting moves, homesteading moves, and just like talking about stuff, you know, talking about cool stuff. We have good conversations, and probably hope to like interview some people. But an idea that we're kind of running with right now is like separate the episode up into like mind, body, and spirit, because we're both super interested in like actual science stuff, and you know, like reading studies and finding like health stuff, that kind of stuff, and also like the more esoteric kind of spiritual stuff. Yeah, so that's exciting.
Do it. Yeah. I mean, don't procrastinate. I know so many people who are like, oh, I want to start a podcast. And I'm like, just do it. Like and it's gonna evolve as you start it. Like you're like, okay, this is the idea. And then as time goes by, I remember like years ago, at one point I just wanted I remember I last time I did it, I don't know if you guys know CJ Werleman. He's an author. He's actually an Australian author, and he was on the Rogan podcast a long time ago, and he was on my show. I remember for some reason I think he was the last guest I did it with, but just to trying to do something different, I was doing like 5 questions at the end of every podcast, and I was like, oh, let me ask the guests. Here's some questions, and so not natural, and I felt like such a douche. But I remember a little bit was like I was curious, like I would ask them like what books they've read. It was just really what they were into, so I was trying to get some I guess some references to some really interesting stuff I might have not been aware of. So I've asked them about like what documentaries you like, what books you like. But then I'm like, this is all stuff I'm going to talk about on the podcast anyways. So it's like, why have, because I think that was one of the things I'm like, okay, some of these questions were answered on the podcast. So it kind of seems silly. So yeah, you're going to go through and I had a co-host, and then eventually just got too hard to book the guests and my co-host because he had a kind of a weird schedule. So it just things evolve, and you never know. I mean, Sam says it all the time, and he's a perfect example too. He went through so many podcasts. Like Tinfoil Hat now is like one of his babies, and he's doing really well with that, and Cash Daddies, and it seems like everything he touches now is gold, and it works. But he had a lot of podcasts that didn't work, and I think a lot of times when you see somebody who is doing well, you have this assumption that like, oh, he just it always went well. Like he didn't have anything that failed. And so then when we fail, we're like, oh, what the hell's going on? Why aren't I getting the numbers or whatever? And then you realize like you just got to do what you enjoy doing, and you hope everything else falls in place. And I know I keep saying that even on my on the Ripple Effect podcast, I say that all the time because I'm so bad with the business perspective and like that part of it. And I'm just like, I turn down people like sponsorships all the time. I know on the UM Done Wanted, I'm not the only one involved in that. And I know some of the guys have discussed it, and I'm like, whatever you guys want to do, I'm a team player, whatever. But I get the idea of like, okay, try to make anything that can fund a show. If the show's important, anything that can fund the show in a decent way, why not? It'll only help expand the show. But I hate hearing commercials, so I'm like, and I don't want to do them. So I don't even like doing the intros. Sometimes I swear it takes me longer to record and re-record the intros than it did to have the full podcast. I'm just like, like I'm like, oh, I sound like a fucking idiot, or this thing's too long, or why did I mention that in the intro? And I'll like delete it. And the next thing you know, it's like an hour later. I'm like, what am I doing? So it's wild. But yeah, you just gotta stop procrastinating. Just not that you're procrastinating, Pat, but I know a lot of
Yeah.
listening, like they procrastinate about things that they want to do, and it's like, dude, life's too fucking short. Like, go out and do it. Like, whatever you enjoy doing, do it. It's find pleasure, whatever you find pleasure in, pursue it and do it. And how's Australia down under, huh? It's
Happy New Year, Ricky. How are you, buddy?
Happy New Year. That's right. Yeah.
I was just going to say, would you even knock back sponsorships from fast car companies? I've seen you've got a sort of a liking for fast cars. It's something on your Instagram. So
yeah.
Yeah, things are okay down here. I mean, it's just been like the Christmas, New Year's break, so it's sort of a bit, that weird period where everyone's a bit delirious over those days, and sort of today is back to work for some of us, and yeah, so things have been sort of normal. There's weird stuff going on with the testing and everything, which is sort of interesting, and sort of, well, I just wanted to hear what was happening in other places this morning or this evening over your way. But yeah, things feel okay, but then I'm just seeing the news and how skits things are in, Austria and Amsterdam and things like that, and just wondering if it's sort of coming back around here, when things start to cool off after summer. But trying to be positive, and in the interim, it feels like most people are sort of, it's pretty hard if they've got a few brain cells to not see now that, there's sort of something they need to just question a bit more. So happy New Year to everyone, and I hope they're digesting all that. But yeah, we've done what we could last year to try and share our sort of learnings with everyone. So hopefully this year is normal, but it's hard to say if that's going to be the case.
Yeah, first of all, I want to say, if Jaguar wants to send me a brand new car, I will send it as a sponsorship. But
good clarification.
But it's weird because, like, the winter, it seems like every winter's the same thing. Like, the summer comes and it's like there's no way you're going to convince people to stay home during the summer when it's nice, especially in New England, where like the summers are so short and you're limited on, how many nice weeks and months and weekends you have. So you're never going to convince them to stay home, and they're going to gather. And when you gather and the news is telling you like hell is freezing over, and you're gathering with friends and nothing happens, it's going to make people more skeptical. So I think, like, you see it during the winter when people are home more, and also people are just getting sick more because viruses stay alive in the cold. It's it's much easier to like scare people. And I mean, testing's been going irate, or, in Massachusetts, everybody's testing. There's lines out the door everywhere for the common cold. Everybody's testing, and the case numbers are going up. And it's like, dude, there's not even been one death in the fucking country. Like, the one death that they contributed to it, and I don't believe there's been any deaths anywhere. There might have, I mean, maybe I'm wrong about that, but I mean, the one that they contributed to it was a complete bullshit story. I personally would love your guys's.
That one was actually a climate change death. They switched it.
Yeah, that makes, I actually, wasn't that's actually not a joke, right? Didn't they actually blame it on climate change?
There is a confirmed climate change death in Canada.
And did they explain how climate change could kill somebody?
No.
Only one individual?
Yeah.
What the fuck does that even mean? Oh my God, that's so weird.
My question for anyone here then is just like, do they know if this thing about the PCR test coming like to an end and being valid on the 31st December is true or not? Because I've got like screenshots here where that's what people were saying online, but information's so hard to understand. And so to me, maybe it is like a transition away from that by making it look like such a horrible system, because as you just said, we've also got queues around the blocks all of a sudden just for no reason. It's middle of summer, and now even today in the news they're saying they're going to start to shut down these testing sites, which means that all of a sudden they're sort of changing their play again. So yeah, I was just curious if anyone knew anything about that.
It seems weird that they just put it out in the ether that everybody needs to get tested, that everyone's testing. And then as soon as they do that, then there's these 2-mile long lines. And they put it out there like coming into Christmas that a great thing to do is test people in your garage, offer them hors d'oeuvres while you're waiting for results. And it's real now. It's what people are doing. It just takes one concerted mass formation media effort, and then it just happens.
Yeah, the PCR coming to an end though, over your way.
Well, it seems like there is conversations about it being bullshit. And I mean, the other thing too is like all these people are testing positive. Nobody even like I don't even know how they're figuring out who has which variant. I don't know if anybody knows. Did they increase the cycles again? Did they not? Like nobody. So all these case numbers are like to me until more information is released. I don't know anything. Like I'm just. I mean, it could all be bullshit. So it's wild. I mean. I was obviously the Peter McCullough show with on Joe Rogan was awesome. I was super. I mean, because he really is like a black belt. I keep saying it, but he really. I mean, he doesn't give opinion. He gives data and statistics over and over again. I don't see how anybody could listen to him and debate anything he says, and that's probably why nobody wants to debate him because he's just so informed. And he's so connected to everybody else that's so informed. I mean, he knows of Joel Hirschhorn. He knows of Dr. Jessica Rose. Like he works with. I mean, I wasn't even aware of all the doctors I've had on the show that he works with, and he's because each doctor is like an expert or has a focus on one thing. Like Dr. Jessica Rose, who's actually going to be on again this week with Dr. Pierre Corey, and she does amazing work with the VARs. And then you have Dr. Joel Hirschhorn, who was one of the first people reporting on the suppressed treatments. And it's like he's so tapped into all these people and all their work, and he just takes it all in and regurgitates it so well. It's just like it's amazing. And really it reminds me of how skeptical we were of Spotify, right? When Joe Rogan first went there, and for him to let Dr. Peter McCullough go on, and now Dr. Robert Malone, who's just on. I mean, it's like, well, I guess Rogan was right about Spotify because they're letting him do his thing. And what I think what makes me be extra optimistic about 2022 is the way Rogan never takes compliments well. People talk about like how well his show is. He's always like, I don't like to talk about it, But when Dr. Robert Malone was on a show, and at the end of the show, when he was like thanking him for giving these doctors a platform and giving this this perspective a place to be heard, he didn't feel weird about it or act like a person who doesn't take compliment. Like it's almost like he understands, like with his platform he has a obligation almost to do what he's doing. And I honestly didn't know if he would basically, with great power comes great responsibility. A lot of times it almost seems like he doesn't even want to talk about the fact that he has any power. He just wants to keep doing what he's doing. And he's like, he doesn't want to talk about responsibility or anything like that. And I agree with him in some sense. Like, yeah, like you're not required to do anything. But I think the fact that now he feels like he is, it makes me think he finally understands what he's up against and how important this fight really is, which gives me hope for the future, because I just feel like Fauci, like most, many more people are taking him less serious and are much more skeptical of him. Robert Kennedy Jr.'s book is fucking killing it. It just, even with the suppression and no advertising or marketing, he's killing it. And
yeah, I bought it for Deborah for Christmas, and it was back ordered on Amazon.
Yeah, I think mine's coming in this week. Mine was back ordered too. I ordered it. And
hey, Ricky, do you think if they hadn't done the horse dewormer to Joe Rogan that he would have gone this hard?
So for a long time I did not listen to Rogan because in the beginning in 2020, like I was like so turned off by just his opinions and how he was kind of like
Peter Hotez.
Yeah, that piece of shit, which was weird because Peter Hotez, when he was on his show, and I've talked about this in the past, so apologies if you guys have heard this before, but I think it's important because I was kind of upset about the fact that he wouldn't have people on like Del Bigtree or Robert Kennedy Jr. or any of these, or even the doctors that just recently have been on. He didn't have anybody like that on before, but you would have a Peter Hotez on, okay, which has links to the vaccine industry, and then he catches him in a bullshit lie. When I had what was her name? I can't remember her name. Who did the book on Lyme disease and bioweapons? But she was on my show twice, and then she I think she was on Tinfoil Hat and a couple other shows afterwards. But I remember doing some research when she was coming on the second time, maybe. And I ran in some clip because I was looking into Lyme disease and stuff like that. And I ran into a clip about Joe Rogan talking to, I think it was Frankie Edgar from the UFC about his wife having Lyme disease. And it's brought up the Lyme disease vaccine. And then Rogan's like, yeah, he's like, that vaccine was bullshit. I know somebody who got Lyme disease from the vaccine. So I'm like, wow, this is the first time I've ever seen him ever say anything skeptical of any vaccine. And then, so I ran into this clip and I'm like, and then I ran into a clip with him and Dr. Hotez and him having this conversation with Hotez after the Frankie Edgar interview. And he's like, yeah, that Lyme disease vaccine didn't work. And he's like, I actually know somebody who got Lyme disease. And Hotez is like, no, that's not what happened. He's like, it was because rumors were going around that it didn't work. And then people lost faith in it, and then it didn't become profitable, and that's why I got taken off the market. And Rogan's like, no, I'm pretty sure it got taken off the market because it was actually getting people sick and harming people. And he's like, no. He's like, I know the guy who created the vaccine. That wasn't the case. And then Rogan's like, well, there's a lot of anti-vaxxers who say MMR vaccine causes autism. Why haven't they stopped selling that? Because obviously people have lost faith in it. Because so he was basically saying, with using your same logic, how can you explain that? And I'm just like, Rogan, are you not seeing what fucking is going on? Like, you just caught him in a bullshit lie. You basically exposed him as just being a pro-vaccine idiot who, you know, even when something is so obvious, he won't admit that like any vaccine could be harmful. So yet, like, so my point is, like, after that, I was like, okay, maybe he'll turn a corner. Like, maybe this will make him rethink things a little bit. And it didn't. And then I'm just like, what the fuck is going on here? And then when Del Bigtree was on my show the first time in 2020, not the first time on my show, but the first time during the lockdown, at the end of the show, I don't know if you guys remember, but I'm like, we got to get you on the Rogan show. And he's like, I forget what he said, like, Rogan's a pussy, or Rogan's I don't know what he said, but he was like rip shit. And he's like, Rogan's a pussy. He won't have me on the show, and he won't have Robert Kennedy Jr. on the show. We've reached out to his people, and he knows who we are, blah, you know. And I'm just like, wow, man, this fucking sucks, because he would be a great ally in all this. And when you listen to somebody on a podcast long enough, okay, you know, we're all podcast fans. We all listen to probably many hours of podcasts. You get a sense that you kind of know who the person is. Like, you're listening to somebody share their ideas and having conversations for hours and hours and hours. Who they are comes out, you know, and you can't disguise it. I feel like, you know, especially Rogan, who does really long conversations, and in many cases a little not sober at times. So, you know, who you are comes out. And I know so many people who are connected with him that I'm just like, everybody says he's a good guy, and I want to believe he's a good guy, because I've been listening to him for such a long time, and he was my biggest inspiration to start my own podcast. And so I wanted to believe that in time, privately, maybe not publicly, but privately, people like Eddie Bravo and people like other people that he's close with are gonna be like, dude, this is bullshit. Like, you should look into this, you should look into that. And or maybe even just, you know, who I think ended up being one of the biggest influences was people like Tim Dillon and Weinstein, Brett Weinstein. I mean, Brett Weinstein, being a respected scientist and somebody who knows this shit, and not anywhere close, like he's never been considered a conspiracy theorist or anybody in that world. When he's coming out and saying, like, hey, like, there's something weird going on, there's suppression of science, there's, you know, there's doctors that are being censored all over the place, like there's just too much going on that it can't be all coincidental, and it can't all be because of its misinformation or disinformation. So I think Brett Weinstein deserves a lot of credit. I think guys like Dr. Peter McCullough and Dr. Robert Malone, who knew that this was not good for their career to be as outspoken as they are, deserve a lot of credit. And I think that we're trending in the right direction. I think that if he continues, like, now I'm excited to see who he continues to have on, because I just listened to the recent No Agenda podcast. I don't know if any of you guys listen to it, but he was talking about how Adam Curry was talking about how Joe Rogan was like, hey, there's a lot of shit going on, like, you know, come back on the show. So I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? You know, so you're getting these little hints of, like, he's trending in that direction. I mean, he joined Getter or whatever the app is, and that was after Dr. Robert Malone at the end of the podcast mentioned that he was on there, and then he tweets like, "Hey, in case shit goes down on Twitter, I'm over here on Getter," which makes sense because it's good for him to have some type of direct way of talking and communicating with his audience, much quicker than obviously releasing a podcast. So I think that's awesome that he's looking at backup plans. So I mean, I feel like we're trending. I mean, what do you guys feel? Do you guys, because I'm talking too much, I can tell. But do you guys feel like we're trending in the right direction, or am I being too optimistic? Anybody want to jump in?
Well, I'm not gonna ever have a podcast. I'm Thomas Haley, and I'm a long time listener of your shows, and I really like your show. And because I don't think I'm gonna have a podcast, I'm not gonna shoot myself in the foot when I say things that I think that you guys don't have to nod or agree if you have your podcast, because it can be detrimental to your careers. But I think guys like Rogan, who can go as far as he can go, and everybody else who can go far, are some sort of a gatekeepers. I'm sure that on a personal level, with crushed ice and whiskey and whatever fun times they want to have, it's going to be awesome, and elk steaks, and you can name it, you can have all the good times. But I think that all of the people that are alive and are doing well had a talk. There was a door, they closed the door, they put on, it was a stand-up comedian who said this bit one time, that every president who's alive had that talk when they sat in a dark room with just smoke, and then on a projector screen there was an angle of the grassy knoll that nobody ever saw before, and they looked at him and it's like, "Mr. President, do we understand each other?" And it's like, "Yep," and they walked out of the room, and next thing you know, he was praying at the wall and doing his thing. So my point is, there is, I think, talks that are taking place, and you can keep on doing what you're doing, but you can only go 80%. You're a good gatekeeper. And when they, when the phone rings and they say this is that call, then we're like, "Oh, okay, I step off the gas." That's my take on it. That I think that there are a lot of people that I'm thankful for them shining light on certain topics, and it's not just conspiracies and whatever. It's all kind of aspects of our life for existence and different topics. But there are people like everybody listened to Alex Jones, but I think he had a talk with him, somebody somewhere. Joe Rogan probably had a talk one point when he went too far in some conversations and started maybe beating down doors, and then he kind of like backtracked a little bit, changed his tone a little bit. And like when I listen to the Union of the Unwanted, I often think like, is there going to be a Mexican standoff one day when you all look at each other like, so who's the snitch? Because by rule of big numbers, one of you is a rat. You just don't know who it is. So my point is, like, you never know who is being let go how far, and how successful you can be, and how much truth you can say. Because with today's technology that's available, when you become a problem, you won't exist. That's my take on it. Like when you are allowed to be made an example of, that's your way that you're allowed to exist, of showing the others how they're going to punish you and erase you slowly and painfully. Like Assange, he's definitely not a rat. At least, I mean, what do I know? I'm a dumb carpenter. But I'm saying, like, the way they treat him, he's definitely somebody who is more than a controlled opposition. And I think that when you're really in somebody's way, they step on you and you pop like a pimple and it's over with. So that's my take on it. And I mean, I'm very optimistic about 2022, but not in terms of like what dumb ideas I can come up with to comply with this any further. I'm going to like get out of the way is my way of complying. Like I been frequently visiting West Virginia, looking for land that's 2 hours away. And I think that optimists, if I say I'm an optimist, I would say I'm an optimist in terms of large groups of people will be able to successfully create some sort of a breakaway societies. Like smaller tribal communities are gonna probably do very well. And those who are squeezing large populations and try to restrict their existence are going to create those new pockets of independent groups of people who are going to exist, because not every doctor going to get a vaccine. Not every cop going to get a vaccine. Not every firefighter, electrician, carpenter, plumber. So those people are going to have to do something. And I think that's why I'm optimistic. I think it's going to be a big shit show before that comes through. And I'm just always listening to your show. And hey, Ricky, before I shut up, in all of your podcast listings, you listing your podcast from 1 to infinity. And every time when I turn on my car, I have to scroll through all of them to find what's your latest. So lately I've been not listening to you because I can't find your podcast, because you have 300, 400, 500 podcasts. I forgot how many, but every other podcast starts with the newest ones. You're always list number 1 from way back when you started on all of my apps.
I'm assuming you're using Spotify.
Yeah.
Because so for some reason I'm glad you mentioned this, because this is something I do have to talk to Podomatic and about, because and I don't know why that is, because you're right. If you go on Spotify, it starts from number 1 and then it goes in reverse. I think there's a way of maybe just, saying newest first, changing the order of it. I could be incorrect. I don't use Spotify besides the Rogan podcast. I don't listen to any other shows on there. Usually I use Podcast Addict because I get it directly from people's RSS feed. I don't have to worry about having some type of a middleman or anything like that. So you try Podcast Addict for the time being, or I mean, it's on iTunes, it's on Podcast Addict.
I'll find you.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. I like this show.
Thanks. It's
so now you know you have a Hungarian fan. Well, I live in Pennsylvania, but I'm your Hungarian fan, so you can go international.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully I do go international. So
yeah, I know, but you get guys isn't there a guy from Finland or something?
Oh, yeah,
Ronnie.
Yeah.
Ronnie's awesome. He's become another fan favorite, because he's just that podcast addict who he's constantly up to date on shit, because he listens to everybody's I'm like, how do you have time? Is this what you do when you're in a socialist country? You just sit around and listen to podcasts? But it's he's awesome. But no, I love, it's funny because I do really well in the English speaking country. So in last year I had over 1 million downloads for the year. I just checked actually recently, just kind of interested to see what shows did well or whatever. And it's the majority of them are always English speaking countries. So it's the UK. I do really well in the UK, Australia, obviously the US, Canada, but and then weird countries like Sweden, for some reason I still get a lot of downloads, in Germany. But Western Europe, I kind of suck. I don't do a whole lot, in Western Europe besides the UK. In Portugal, I suck. In Spain, so I'm actually gonna try to get on Iconic. So one thing I was gonna mention, because Alex Jones was mentioned, I am approved to be on a band.video. So Rob Do hit me up and heard good things about the show, and so I think now it's going to be on band.video too. So hopefully that's another audience I can kind of tap into. And honestly, I just want to put the show everywhere and anywhere. My show's not going to change. It never has. And honestly, once I get it set up on band.video, or I'm hoping I can also get it set up on Iconic, basically Matt from Content Safe does the rest of the work, because I just upload onto Odyssey. I used to upload on YouTube, and then he used to sync my YouTube channel to all my other channels. Now I upload on Odyssey, because obviously I'm not on YouTube. My full episodes are on YouTube, and then he sends it to all the other locations. So I figured the more places the better, and there's going to be, and I'm a big fan of what Robert Kennedy Jr. said. I forget which interview he did where he was talking about this, but about he's like, I'll go on any show, I'll talk to anybody. He's like, I don't care if I disagree with them. He's like, it's about, he's all about building bridges, not burning them. And I'm the same way, and my show's a history of that. I mean, I've had, obviously I've had a lot of libertarians on and people from that perspective, but I've also had Professor Richard Wolff on, who's, the leading scholar in Marxism, and I've had plenty of left leaning people like Lee Camp and stuff like that. So I just like having conversations with people and picking up.
Hey, you should have asked that guy, the leading expert on Marxism. Like, you ever talk to people who ate and, you know what I mean, like, live and breathe that shit? Like, when it's actually like, that's your life, it's not that grand. Like, I grew up in socialist Hungary, and I have a few choice words to describe his ideas in reality.
Oh,
It's a very interesting conversation, because somebody, you know, have like a chalk in his hand and he just walks up and down a classroom and just, you know, burps out a bunch of bullshit. But I could tell him a little bit. My family lost 8,000 acres, American acres, when wealth redistribution happened. So when I see, you know, these Bernie Sanders stickers, that gets real funny quick. Because when people talk about redistributing wealth, anyway, go ahead. I'm so sorry. I just when you told me, like, yeah, you listen to everybody, but sometimes you just have to, like, call people out for the bullshit. Be like, so how does that work for you, buddy?
Well, I did it with Pam Popper. She came on.
Yeah, I know that sometimes you do it, but it's just really, it's fantastic. In 2022, somebody can be still recognized. Like, you could say, like, I'm an expert in that bullshit, but to sort of like advocate for somebody full-heartedly, yeah.
Well, it's different. This is the thing, is like, do they have something to offer, right? And honestly, I'll also see it as like a mental exercise. Like, okay, do I, like, are they going to find holes in my thinking? I don't like to assume I'm right on anything, you know. And you know, when I had Dr. Robert Lustig on too, he was a guy who I was a huge fan of for years. He had that lecture that went viral called The Bitter Truth, and it was phenomenal. And he understood the corruption of medicine and food, and how, you know, our nutrition is what's making us sick and making pharma money, and how corrupt the food industry is and all this stuff. And at the very end of the show, he said something about the vaccine. And then next thing you know, I'm like, I can't let this go. I got to say something. So then I end up saying something. And then the last like 10 minutes was us arguing about the vaccine. You know, he called it a vaccine. And I'm like, it's not even a vaccine. It's gene therapy. And then he's like, no, it's not, you know, it's a vaccine, you know, which is hilarious, because I think at the time we're referring to Moderna, who doesn't even make vaccines. They're a gene therapy company. So it's just like, yeah,
What about Dennis McKenna?
Oh my God. That was, you know, it's funny. So when Charlie had him on, so Charlie's like, hey, Rick, can you hook me up with Dennis McKenna? I'm like, I can, but just don't bring up politics.
Yeah.
I'm like, because my first episode I did with him years ago was phenomenal. I've always been, if you listen to the iTunes version of the Ripple Effect song by my music project Theory 6, he's actually sampled in that song. You can get the song anywhere, or you can get digital downloads. But if you listen to that song, I have a bunch of like stuff, and that song's super old. I mean, that was a song that inspired the name of my podcast. So when I was thinking of names, I'm like, oh, the Ripple Effect. I like that name. I had a song named the Ripple Effect. I can use the song as my theme song, and it kind of got me started. So I was a big fan of his, but these guys are perfect examples of how, like, people think they're open-minded, and then you'll find that flaw. Like, okay, you're open-minded when it's things like, it's these things like that you've already decided these are my issues and these are like the things that I focus on. Once you're really asked to like shatter your worldview, you won't do it. Like, once you're really asked to take that red pill, you're like, you know, you just realize how there's flaws in their thinking. I mean, Dennis McKenna, I'm a huge fan of his. And when we're talking about plant medicines, talking about, you know, food, nutrition, alternative medicines, I mean, we would agree on all that stuff. But I mean, he was on the show for like 5 minutes before he talked about like how bad of a person Trump was and how great of a person Biden was. And I'm just like, what is going, like, but doesn't that also show you the power of politics? Like, because it was bad timing too. Around the election time, so many people were worked up. It's almost like we're all watching professional wrestling together, and we're all getting mad about the heel and the baby face. Like, we're all like, and we're like, guys, it's all fake. We got to, like, before we scream at each other, like, we have to, you know, remind ourselves that it's fake. And I feel like he just got caught up in that shit. And he's also not an expert in that, in the world of politics. You know, he's not
he's a boomer too, man.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Yeah, which you have personal experiences with.
Yeah.
So it's you know, it's just one of those things where just like, you don't see, he literally has, one of the issues he's talked about for so long is the suppression of plant medicines by big pharma, like the incentive that they have to suppress these things. And now all of a sudden, like, you don't think they have any hand in this. That's why I keep saying it. People need to tell their loved ones to watch Dope Sick. If you have people need to be red pilled, have them watch it, because I almost feel like, because it's about a different topic, even though it's about big pharma and their manipulation of the media and their influence on things and how they make up bullshit, scientific words and terms. I mean, when I watched Dope Sick and they called it when Oxycontin, and for people who don't know, I've talked a lot about it recently. But by the way, if you don't have Hulu, it's okay. I don't have Hulu either. I'm just doing a 30-day free trial to try to get through the series. But it's definitely worth watching. And you watch it. So Oxycontin, when they're like, the pill's not working anymore, like, what are we going to do? Like, how do we handle this situation that the pill is actually weakening in time and the pain's coming back? Instead of just like coming to terms with the fact that the pill isn't a long-term, fix, they're like, well, let's call it breakthrough pain. And then what we do is we take the focus off the pill not working. We put the focus on, this is a new thing, and you fix this breakthrough pain by giving them double the dosage. Well, what do we call it now when the vaccine doesn't work? A breakthrough case. It's like the same script. It's the same, techniques. It's like you get the focus off the vaccine not working, and it puts the focus on like, oh, we resolve this by selling more of our product, which is a win-win for the pharmaceutical industry. So I highly recommend people checking that out. I don't know where this rant is going or what even my purpose was of all this talking. What the hell were we talking about? I'm like, what?
Yeah, but it reminded me, you guys, I don't know how you get your political news, but I happened to just heard this from that redheaded guy, JP somebody.
Oh, the comedian. Yeah.
JP Sears.
And he made this funny skit about what they're going to vote on January 5th. And you lose your skull, to quote Sam Tripoli. He always says you lose your skull. And really, when you watch that 5-minute video about the new laws they're going to vote on in New York, it's downright insanity. It's going to, probably because it's a very blue state, it's probably going to go through with flying colors, and then it's probably come to a theater near you.
That's a good way of putting it.
Well, people just leave, like that,
Yeah.
like here in California, for the folks that thought that the mandates for the kids were going to go through. There was a mass exodus from California. People are just leaving in droves because they didn't want to, their kids were going to be enrolling in school in the following year. And even though they've pushed that back a little bit, what's his name? Gavin Newsom. He extended it or something. I don't know what he did, but he's getting too much pushback from it and getting too many lawsuits.
Yeah. So then the way they handle us is like, like, let me put the head in, like, it won't hurt. Like it's still
like junior high, just a tip.
Yeah. That's how I feel like this whole mandate is going. Yep. Eventually it's going to be like full on. And that's why I'm heading for the hills. I'm going to West Virginia. So I'm just letting everybody know. I'm going to tell you where I'm at when I'm there. Do you know that meme that I don't always tell you where I hunt, but when I do, it's usually a lie? So
yeah. West Virginia has a labor history to it. The Battle of Blair Mountain. Right? Yep.
Yes,
that was the last bloodiest battle on U.S. soil.
I just talked to some guys at work about that. It's very misconstrued and misused term is a redneck. Yeah,
people don't know what that means. Redneck actually was that's what they wore in support of the movement. It's not, has nothing to do with the Okies and Sun.
Wait, redneck doesn't mean white power? No, it doesn't. Kidding, absolutely.
That's what the coal miners used to wear.
Yeah,
in support of what they were doing.
So now I derailed your rant, but long story short, there's a couple of crazy things going to happen in terms of, I think, how blue state's gonna get really blue, and red state's probably gonna get really red.
There was
Yeah.
I mean, what's your opinion on Trump running with DeSantis? I mean, Trump's been getting a lot of shit about his comments on the vaccine, how he's kind of tiptoeing around. You know, I mean,
I really don't care at all. Dude. Like, fuck all. I'm sorry, I don't know. Is this PG show? But I mean, really, like, it's gonna be 2024. Like, who cares? Like, genuinely, like, who cares? What happened? What happened? Who did they write checks to different people when Trump was in power? Then when Clinton was in power or any Bush, they still made the checks payable to the same people. And whoever's going to be next time, you know, it's whoever's going to be, they're going to make checks to the same people, right? So we never vote for who they write the checks to. So really, genuinely, I think it doesn't matter, like, at all. Like this circus of like who stole what and all this shit, like, really? Yeah, they made it for you, so everybody's really mad now. And emotional and dumb as a brick and easy to manipulate, because everybody's like out on the street. I live in a small town in Pennsylvania, and some people are still, you know, waving one type of flag. Some people still waving other type of flag. And if you don't wear a mask, then you're this. And if you know, like, there's just all these different divisions, and I just see that it's not gonna go anywhere. There's gonna be more of the, you know, red team, blue team, and I think that's a very good plan for them, whoever they are. But I think more and more people will just choose not to participate. I don't know what the real numbers are, the number of people who are truly believing that voting matters, and then who are the people who just like, well, you know, every 4 years I'm going to go and vote. Because, you know, there are people who participate very actively in every local election, and maybe on a small scale locally they can make small changes. But I think it is really not ever going to make your kids or my kids' life any different of what happens every 4 years in this show that they put on. Just like what you said earlier about the, you know, the wrestling analogy.
Well,
Why would I vote for a wrestler, right? That's how I look at it.
The national scene is meant to just, you know what I mean? It's theater. You know, it's meant to make you pay attention to what's happening over here, like it really matters. But what really matters is in your own backyard. And
Exactly.
you know who you're electing as your mayor, as your, you know, board of directors, your school board. You know, congratulations, you still running for that, Rick?
I sure am. Yeah.
Awesome, man.
It's-
Way to put
Yeah,
your money
that's
where your
where it's
mouth
at.
is.
Yeah, because I mean, it's funny because I've been contacted by so many people in different towns all over the state, and they're like, you have no idea what the hell's going on in your local schools until you get involved, and parents contact you and they're like, this happened, that happened. I've told the story a bunch of, on the podcast, but like for people who didn't hear it, like the middle school. I mean, I live in this town and I didn't hear about this, that there was a transgender librarian, which is fine, whatever, transgender librarian. I don't care what you are or what you do or whatever. Like that's not even relevant. But they end up pushing these books onto middle school kids that had gay sex and lesbian sex and cartoon books, and telling, like, secretly put these books in the library and then told the kids about it. And of course, you're a teen, you know, you're in middle school, you're at that age where it's like it's the forbidden fruit. It's like, oh, what, I can't, I'm what, there's porn or like cartoon porn in our schools. I want to get these books. So then obviously it caused people to want to take them out or whatever. The teacher who exposed what was going on ends up getting fired and now is suing the school. And I'm just like, how is this okay? Like, that's not. And then and the reason why them being transgender or no, he wasn't transgender. He was, maybe he's a cross dresser. It was a male who dressed as a female. I don't know what it was. One of the it wasn't it simply put a male or female, put it that way. And well, the reason why I think it's important that they weren't either a male or female is because I think it's one of the reasons why it's a sensitive topic. People won't be outspoken because then you don't seem sensitive. You don't seem sensitive to other people. It's like, this has nothing to do with sensitivity, because I think that's one of the reasons why the local news didn't want to report on it either. They were saying, well, we don't want to touch this because now we're going to, you know, victimize somebody who is a minority, who we could look like we're not being sensitive to them being different or whatever. So I think it's what makes these conversations kind of hard. But my point of all this is, like, this was happening in my local town. My kids are young, so they're obviously not in middle school, but I would assume there would be enough local chatter where I would hear about this. And I didn't hear about any of this until I started being outspoken at the local school committee meetings, and parents started telling me what the hell was going on. And I'm with Tom 100%. And obviously you guys listen to the show, like, I think the right left thing is ridiculous. But I've been contacted by a lot of local Republican groups, and they're like, we want to back you. We want, well, not back you, because they haven't offered me any money. Hopefully Jaguar does that, but I haven't got any money from and honestly, I don't even know if I need that's one thing. I don't know anything about this fucking process at all. I am such an idiot that well, it's funny because I showed up to get the papers, and you're like, oh, you have to get 50 signed signatures from residents of the town of Ludlow, Massachusetts, that are registered voters. And I'm like, okay, yeah, no problem. And then they look me up and they're like, oh, by the way, you're not a registered voter. And I'm like, oh, that's right. So then they registered me right there, and I'm just like, oh, this whole thing is new to me. So I don't know what, I think eventually once I get those, I'm pretty close. I'm like at, I don't know, 40 something. But I'm going to get more, because sometimes people think they're registered voters and they sign the paper and then they look them up and they're not registered anymore. They moved or whatever. So I'm going to get more signatures just to be on the safe side. But yeah, it's just one of those things where, like, I think eventually I do have to put out signs and do that whole political bullshit, which I don't want to do at all. And a local Republican group contacted me, and they're just concerned parents who just like, dude, like, hey, are you, like, do you consider yourself I'm like, no, I don't consider myself a Republican. I'm like, I don't agree with the political parties, but I'm like, I'll tell you what what my ideas are and what I think is important. And then you guys can decide if you want to back me or if you want to. So I told him, like, listen, you can listen. Here's the podcast. I'm like, and by the way, I've had people on the left on. I'm like, but I think these issues right now are important. Like, I think they are trying to take apart the family. I think that they're trying to confuse the shit out of kids. I think,
CRT is a big deal. Yeah. Implied consent in schools is a big deal, because implied consent, when kids are watching all those videos, you see who's that Sesame Street guy that's talking about the vaccine. These kids are watching these commercials, and then when they go to school, they're being put under a tremendous amount of pressure. You know what I mean? And singled out. And when your kids are at school, they're considered their whatever they call them, guardians. Well, guardians, you know what I mean? When they leave your guardianship, they go to school and they into their guardianship. And so just by you doing that transaction is implied consent. So they can, if they vaccinate your kid without your, permission, any of that stuff, that's just, it's okay. It's fair game.
Yeah. You know where they don't vaccinate kids? At homeschool.
Yeah. Right. And there's a lot of homeschooling things popping up now. There's Good. Tons of them. I know there is here, at least in my county.
Well, unless you're homeschooled by a Karen, then you're gonna vaccinate the shit out of your kid anyways. But no, you're right. I mean, it's I think homeschooling seems like it's almost like the only way to know that you're protecting your child.
But there's so many different options now. Like, my wife and I moved out to the woods, and we used to go to some Freedom Cell stuff when we lived in Portland. Then that got totally hijacked by like social justice warrior Antifa members. So like we saw these signs for like this thing called, it's like Organized Patriots. Of course it has Patriot in the title, you know what it's going to be. But we're like, well, maybe we can meet some local people and at least just like figure something out. and maybe we'll make some friends there. We don't have to keep going to these meetings. We go, it's at this little church in the little town right by us, and it's like a full-on QAnon meeting, you know. These people are complaining about how in one of the towns in our county, like 50 teachers got fired because they didn't want to get the jabo. And their solution to it was to like get everybody and go to the school board meetings and go stand on the streets and like on Saturdays with signs and like yell at cars passing by, and it's like none of them can even think for a second, well, how about we get all the people at our school that don't want our kids to get vaccinated, don't want to learn about CRT, don't think teachers need to get vaccinated, all this stuff that we don't like, we pull them out, we start like a pod with 20 families, give one of these fired teachers $50 a week from each family, and problem solved. But that's like, people are so indoctrinated because they went to fucking state-run public school that they think that that's the only government is the only option to change things. And I think Tom's got the right idea. Nobody's coming to help us, man. You got to help yourselves.
So did you, I remember you were talking last time I heard, you were having an issue because they were mandating it at your union.
Yeah.
Did
no, the union didn't say anything about it. It was the company. It was ThyssenKrupp.
Oh, okay. Did you end up saying screw it and walking away?
No, but like they just realized that they were going to lose 50% of their workforce, and they just never said another word about it.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. The union wasn't going to help us. All the union did was say that like, all they did was say that like, oh, if you guys want to do that, you need to, because they're out of the big 5 elevator companies, they're the only ones that said anything about it. And the union pretty much just said, if you want to have that mandate, you need to bargain for it next time you guys go to the table at the contract. So
yeah, I know our union, they were, they're trying to scare everybody and saying, hey, you're going to be unemployable, and if you don't do this. And then they brought in some dumb, I don't know, some medical person that probably has never seen a patient in her life, to explain it, and for people to ask questions. And I was just like, screw this.
Yeah, they keep trying us to like, I get weekly emails that say like, oh, if please, it's your last chance to upload your vaccination status to the company portal to be eligible for the free $200 worth of like Applebee's gift certificates and ThyssenKrupp branded apparel. $200 worth. That's the enticement to get vaccinated. So
are they making you test? Are they making you test in the meantime, Adam?
No.
Yeah, my company just laid down the law on that. It was you have to upload a status one way or another. If it's not with a vaccine card, then you're probably eligible for testing on a weekly basis, pending what happens on Friday with oral argument in the Supreme Court. But
what
situation?
What state are you in?
Connecticut, just south of Ricky.
Yeah.
Those at home tests, man, 90% false positives. I know a few people that over the holidays they were going to have big shindigs, and they all went and got some the home tests. And the guy that was throwing it, one of my coworkers, he tested positive 3 times, and then he ended up going to get a PCR, canceled his whole deal, went to go get a PCR test at the emergency room, which, I mean, that's not the right thing to do. That's why these emergency rooms are getting filled up. What they say is, people are, doing these at-home tests, they're turning positive, and then they want to go get a PCR test immediately, go to the emergency room. That's what he did. And he ends up, he didn't even have anything.
Dude, imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all know that there's a wild inaccuracies, around all that. I mean, I guess my biggest concern was my heart broke a little bit today that I had to tell somebody one way or another, because I thought, if you want to go get vaxxed, go ahead. If you don't want to learn things, that's your call, man. Look, I'm not here to tell you to do that or not do that. And that's what you want to do. What I stand for is you should be able to tell people if you did that, and you should not have to tell people if you did that. And we're at a watershed moment, because I don't have to go and tell people at work I've worked here for 17 years. I don't have to tell them if I've had a measles, shot or anything like that. And all of a sudden now I have to. And so when does that end? And so there's a certain freedom there with even just acknowledging that you're on a list one way or another. You're on a red list or you're on a black list. And there's no two ways about that at this point. That's the moment. So when you think about when you want to choose to stand up for something, is it when you're waiting to get that jab in your arm, or is it when you're waiting to say, hey, I do or I don't, or I did or I didn't, and I don't know how far back you can go, but just, it was rough today having to go through that.
Everybody has to do their own risk versus benefit analysis, for themselves and their family. And, I got really sick over on the 14th. I ended up testing positive, had a bunch of symptoms. I think I had Delta, but who knows, man? I could have just had the flu. But I got really sick and it turned into a walking pneumonia. And it was, one of those things where I was like, oh man, I got to stop smoking weed now. I really, when you're having a hard time breathing, you start thinking about a lot of stuff. And, I was like, all right, well, I got to quit smoking weed. I lost 20 pounds because I couldn't eat, had no appetite. I'm like, all right, well, there's got to get back on this, health kick, listening to Rogan and all these other things. It's like, all right, well, this is, playtime's over. The only way that I'm going to, get healthy is if I take control of it myself.
Yeah. Sharing medical information is it's crazy how that's become the norm. I couldn't imagine having to tell every single girl I hooked up with that I have genital herpes. That was just kidding. Cody, I know you wanted to jump in.
I've had multiple people have told me that they have it, and I said I don't really care.
Wait.
I told them you can only you can't catch herpes twice, so I'm not too worried about it. Or you could also just tell them, natural. You don't get herpes from being the ugly guy in the room, Ricky.
I have natural. I got natural immunity. You only get it once, and then
that's just forever. It's crazy when you look at the statistics about how many people have it. There's a lot of people that got that.
Well, got it, man.
Well, that's like
unless you're a pussy.
Sexually transmitted disease. Everybody has them, unless you're not getting laid.
If you were hanging out in a strip club in the 90s, you probably got it.
Yeah.
Where are you located, Cody?
Georgia. North Georgia. But one of the things I wanted to say was like the testing. A lot of those tests, even the tests they got in the hospital, are surrogate tests. They have like gold standards they use in the labs, and because they're so expensive, they actually what they do is they find another testing method that's a lot cheaper, and when they get to right around 85 to 90%, then they decide to use that as a surrogate test in the hospital. And then when you get your stuff from CVS or Walgreens, that's a surrogate test of a surrogate test. So as you go down, they're a lot less accurate. So I even thought about checking from time to time, but then I'm like, I really don't care.
It's a huge scam. Like in my area, everybody, like the tests are out of stock. As soon as they bring in 60, they're gone like that. So it's just one of those things where it's just a money grab.
Yeah. Why aren't there rapid antibody tests?
Right.
Yeah,
that would be great.
There's billionaires made in not only just the pharmaceutical, but the PPE, the testing. It's just a huge money grab. And you think of it, and you look at a test that's worth $20 and think, oh, big deal, because that's kind of the way I looked at it at first. It's like it's not much money, but then you multiply that times 300, 400, 500 million, and it's like it's crazy. Mm-hmm. And they're probably all made in China anyway. So,
hey, Ricky, can I ask you a question about Robert Malone?
Sure.
Is he pushing some other medication?
He has referenced some things that he's working on, right?
Because I've heard that he doesn't want the vaccination, maybe because he's pushing some other.
Well, he got vaccinated.
Yeah, he was vaccinated. He got injured too.
That's that's one of the things that I find fascinating about like how Robert Malone gets called an anti-vaxxer. Because I'm like, how can you call anybody who willingly got the vaccine an anti-vaxxer?
Yeah, and then when he was on Unity Unwanted, he was talking about how it is effective for like old people, and he's down with all the other stuff too.
Well, that's
all the other
I feel
facts.
it's changed a little bit too, because I feel like initially, you're right, because I remember, who was it, Dr. Lindsay, who I think afterwards, after he got off the call,
Yeah, she was like, I don't think you should get any of them.
yeah, and I agree. But the thing is, like, okay, even when he was on my podcast, on the Ripple Effect podcast, as the solo show, I had some people listen when they're like, well, he didn't really say not to get it if you're, at that risk. If you're those people that they say are at high risk, which is silly, because I've said this over and over again. This is how none of this makes any logical sense. If you're at high risk and the vaccine doesn't work and you die from COVID, they say it's because you're at high risk and you have all these health issues. But those are the same people that you're saying need it the most, and it's designed to protect the most. So it's like none of it makes any logical sense. But he's another person, kind of like, other people that I've mentioned on the show, that I'm like, he contributes a lot. I think he's helping the movement. I think he's helping open people's minds, and he's not completely, that's the other thing too. Like he's been in the vaccine business, like he works, he's been a consultant. He works close with companies so he's not anti-vaccine, which I think only gives him more credibility, that when he says like, hey, there's something more going on here, people should listen, because it's not coming from a perspective of I'm anti-vax, so that's why I'm outspoken. He's not anti-vax. He just sees all the corruption going on, and with this specific vaccine, and he's being outspoken. So it's like, even if I disagree with him on if anybody should get the vaccine, which I think he is coming around again with that. His last interview, the one that he just did on Rogan, I don't know if I recall, maybe you guys remember, but I don't remember him saying that anybody should take it. Do you guys remember him? Because he did used to say that. He
was careful when he was on your show, and when he was on the Union of the Unwanted, he was really careful with his wording. And I feel like since the time has passed and he's talked to more people, and he's really taken a stance on the two hills he wants to die on, and that's the saving the children and freedom of speech. I think he's just at the point where he's like, you know what, enough is enough. There's a lot of us that are at that point, like, enough is enough. What are we gonna do now? I think the 23rd, you gonna head down there?
Oh, into Florida?
No, it's Washington.
I thought, what's going on in Washington? Maybe we're talking about two different things.
Well, it's the March on Washington.
Oh, the March on Washington. Yeah, no, I know that Dr. Malone and a bunch of other doctors have been on the show. Del Bigtree, Dr. Northup, however you pronounce her name. She was on before too. But a bunch of doctors are going to be speaking in Florida somewhere.
Oh, okay.
I thought that's what you were referring to. Yeah, but I agree with you 100%. I almost feel like him being banned off Twitter was like, well, fuck it. I'm not going to like tiptoe to this line now, because like I was attempting to tiptoe to line, because he even said on the Rogan interview that he's like, his wife and him go through like, what should I share? How should I word this? Because I think what he was trying to do is like, how do I get this information out there without getting censored? So if I have to maybe self-censor a little bit so I can continue to do this with my big following, then great. So, but I think now he's gotten to the point where it's like, well, they're going to censor me even if I try to tiptoe that line. So fuck it. Like, he's not saying, like I said, he talked to Rogan for 3 hours, and I'm not sure I remember him ever recommending the vaccine to anybody. Like, I don't know if maybe it just that specifically didn't get brought up, and that could be the case too. But it could also be like Sean said, maybe he's, his mindset's changed, and he's like, fuck it. He's like, I can't, like, we have to do something. This is getting really bad. And it almost seems like that's how a lot of these people feel right now. Look at Dr. Peter McCullough. He's going on every show possible. I think he's really, like I've said before, I I mean, I already had tons of respect for Dr. Peter McCullough, but for him to act, I really expected him to blow me off when to come on the Union of Unwanted when the Rogan show was released the same day.
That was wild, man. You got him the same day.
It was just, it's funny because like Charlie keeps telling people that I get all the credit for that. Really, I get some credit for getting him to come on the Union of Unwanted on that episode, but he agreed to come on that episode before I even knew he was going on the Rogan podcast, and before anybody knew when it was going to be released when he was on. So when he was, when I found out that he was going on the Rogan podcast, he doesn't release shows the same day that it's recorded. So I'm like, I wonder when this is going to be released. And then when it was released that Monday, and I knew that Dr. Peter McCullough already agreed on coming on the Union Unwanted, I was convinced that he was just going to blow me off because he was going to be just overwhelmed with attention, that he just wasn't going to have time. So the fact that he was still willing to come on, I'm like, holy shit, this dude is really, really motivated by getting this information out there, regardless how big of a platform it is. And so I got like, I can't even, explain how much respect I have for him for doing that. I'm actually still surprised that he even saw my email with the Zoom link after. Like, I honestly thought that was going to happen too. I'm like, he's never going to find this fucking email. I'm like, he's probably getting his email is just blowing up. He's probably never going to find the email. So, but I think we're going in the right direction. I think the fact that Robert Kennedy Jr. went on James Corbett. James Corbett years ago when I started watching his work and being a fan of his work, he was like myself, like what we were into. This information was considered conspiracy theorist stuff, and now he's hooking up with somebody like Robert Kennedy Jr. He's also asked to be a part of the Renegade History University. Yeah, when I had Thaddeus Russell on, he didn't dive into any real conspiracies, and now like for him to have his mind blown by James Corbett and like do work with him and stuff. I just think that like the mainstream people and what was all considered alternative media, like that line's being blurred, and I think a lot of people that were in alternative media are now becoming much more mainstream because the things that they were saying doesn't seem crazy anymore. You can't pigeonhole them and say those were crazy things that was said, because it's like it's all happening. And so it's just one more reason to be optimistic. Maybe I'm just looking for the optimistic things, but I do feel like if we hold on and we continue fighting and pushing back, like we're winning. And I think having people like, if you told me a year ago that Rogan was going to have on somebody like Dr. Peter McCullough, and who's going to do 3 hours of telling you about all the suppressed treatments, about all the bullshit statistics, about all, like 3 hours of that. And he was just going to sit there and not push back on any of it. And just at the end of the show, basically look like he fucking like just had his mind blown. I'd be like, no, that's like, no way he'll ever be on a big platform like that and have that much time to say only things that go against the mainstream narrative. And it's happening. So I think that there is some hope, and I think that 2022. A lot of people believe shit's gonna get much worse before it gets better. Is that kind of how you guys feel, or do you think that it already?
It's not gonna get worse for me. It's gonna get worse for city dwellers.
Yeah, I'm out in away from the city, so. I drive to Silicon Valley to go do work. No, I've never been bothered about, my vaccinations or anything like that. I know that some of the job sites are requiring them, and all you gotta do is show them, then they all right.
Well, they're half-assing, even just reviewing any place that's required for a vaccine thing. Like people are like barely looking at them, like nobody's taking it seriously. The gym that one of the gyms I go to, Best Fitness, they refuse to mandate masks. Last time they did it, and this time, like the mandate in Springfield, Massachusetts, where I work out, they're not going along with it. And they never got, and it was all fear mongering. The health department went in there last time, scared the shit out of them, or attempted to scare the shit out of them. I ended up asking my buddy who runs it, the manager at the gym, and he's like, dude, they never end up sending the fines. They're telling us they're going to fine the shit out of us. He's like, they never sent one fine. And he's like, the money that they would have lost from all the members who are like, hey, I'm not going to the gym while I have to wear masks, put a hold on my account. Or people are like, just cancel my account for now. And I'm like, you a lot of those members you'll never get back. He's like, instead, they started getting more members because people were telling their friends like, hey, they're not requiring you to wear a mask. And honestly, it's a private fucking business anyways. I don't even see how that makes sense. It's not open to the public. If you go in there, what the deal is, and you decide if you want to, take that risk, just like you decide when you fucking go bungee jumping or skydiving or anything else. Like, that's a risk you decide that you want to take. Who the fuck are we to tell you that you shouldn't do that? It's like, are we going to get to the point, and it's possible, could we get to the point where we're like, hey, there's too much of a risk in driving, so we're not going to let you drive anymore, and we're just going to,
get you a Tesla, let the Tesla drive you?
Yeah.
All the gyms here, I do jujitsu, and the jujitsu gyms, a bunch of them closed down, a bunch of them lost members because they went to places that didn't close down. American Top Team here, OSHA came there, they told them to fuck off and lock the door. They have never got any repercussions, never shut down. And I live in fucking Portland, Oregon, man, where everything got shut down.
Yesterday I went bowling with a Telegram Freedom group that I belong to, a local group. And we all went bowling, and the signage was all there, but we walk in and no masks, no nothing, which was nice.
That's a lot of times there's one business, a Italian restaurant in East Longmeadow, which is a town not too far from me, where they never ever shut down and they never required masks. And the owner and it's a married couple, older Italian, and they just did not give a fuck. And they never got, and everybody's like, how did they not get shut down? How did they not get fined? And nothing ever happened to them. It's like a little mom and pop business. And so again, like, how much of it's just fear mongering? How much of it's just scaring the shit out of people into complying? And
then how much of it is people actually telling on those businesses?
That happened a lot, and that would piss me off. I would see people in like on Facebook, because Facebook, it's a mixture of like people that know me from the podcast and like people who know me from my personal life, and they're just like, don't go to this pizzeria, they're not wearing masks or whatever. I'm like, dude, why are you even, like, if you're that concerned, like, why are you actually even showing up to the pizzeria? You should be getting delivery,
Right.
What do you like? And these poor people, like, who have to fucking deal with these masks. I mean, the fact that masks is even a conversation. Michael Malice brought up it's called like the minimal compliance mask or something like that. I've got some for my kids, and it's just like, you basically can breathe pretty easily. It's like, I don't know, it's like having like a nylon stocking on your face or something. But it's like, it's really easy to breathe in and out of. But if you have to use one, like, use one of those. If you're really, I know people are in shitty situations, and not everybody is as willing to go against the grain as some of us. Some people just want to get along with everybody and don't want to get in trouble, or maybe they're just in a situation where they have to keep their job or whatever, and they just want to comply. But do stuff like that, because the truth is, nobody really gives a fuck what's on your face. We say it all the time. It's not about science, about compliance. If I showed up with, to the gym with, that required masks with a giant shield, knowing that it's still like, nobody would come up to me and tell me that that's not, that there's something wrong with that, because I'm complying. I'm playing in with the, I'm going along with the game, and that's all they really care about. So, but my gym was, just real quick, before I forget, because that was actually my point, was that my gym was also, they have branches in New York, I think near Albany, but they're not going to, they're not enforcing any of the vaccine mandates or anything. They're like, headquarters, corporate already said they're not going to do any of it. So there are places, even in the worst of states, that are, sticking up for what they believe and fighting back, and we need to support those businesses. I don't know if you guys heard the Ian Smith podcast that I did with the gym owner from New Jersey, Atlas Gym. I mean,
Atlas Gym, is that those guys?
I'm the one who had him on, and you get his name right.
Yeah.
I'm such an idiot sometimes. That's probably why me and Sam Tripoli get along, because we look up names and we don't get anything right. But what were you gonna say, Sean, before I interrupted you? Sorry.
Well, no, I was going to say that, during the Spanish flu in 1918, more people died from mask wearing and bacterial pneumonia than from the flu. My dad even got bacterial pneumonia from wearing his mask. And it's like, the doctors, most people, like I see kids, and they're just, they're those masks, their parents aren't cleaning them every day. They're not giving them new ones every day.
I pick up my kids from time to time and I drop them off from time to time. Kids are wearing the exact same mask every single day. And I've told this to teachers there, I'm like, what's the protocol if my kid goes to the bathroom and drops his mask? I'm like, how do you know if he drops his mask, on a dirty bathroom floor and then puts it on his face? How do you know when he's at recess, he drops it on, who knows, some manure or something like that and puts it on his, like, you don't know, like nobody cares, like nobody's paying attention. And like, if it was about health, these are things that you would factor in. You'd factor in like, hey, if a kid sneezes in his mask, we're replacing it immediately. If a kid doesn't wash his hands and he's touching his mask, we'd replace it immediately. Obviously, I'm not saying I'm for any of these things, but I'm saying if it would be a example or a reflection that they actually care about the kids' health, and they don't. It's about just, do you make your kids wear masks at your homeschool? I'm kidding.
No, I won't put a mask on my daughter at all, no matter where I go. Now I may have to put one on, but there's no mask on my kid ever.
I tell my kids that all the time when they come. They're like, "Oh, we're gonna get in trouble." I'm like, "Listen, like, somebody will yell at me. Nobody's gonna yell at a cute little kid, and if they do, cunts, and we're gonna have some issues. I'm gonna tell Adam, teach me how to do that triangle, and I'm gonna tap. But
straight arm bar someone.
Yeah." But it's kind of exposed the pussies in the world. Like so many people who are like, I'm like, dude, because there's even people in my personal life that I'm like, I feel like you would like not fall for this mask bullshit, or you would not, be one of those people who are paranoid, and it's just, there's so many cowards out there that were just like, it's really easy to seem really tough until like the shit hits the fan and I'm just like, I had people over my house the whole lockdown. I told everybody, I'm like, listen, you're more than happy to come over and anytime you wanted. And obviously, like I always say, I'm like, I love my kids. I wouldn't put them in danger unless I was absolutely sure that they weren't in danger. And just understanding the human body and always being in nutrition and health, germs, and especially germs from other people, like spreading them is good for your immune system. It's good for them. I grew up playing in dirt, being outside all the time. I skateboarded, I BMX'd, I was always outside. I was playing basketball, playing soccer. I was, I never washed my hands ever, like even my mom would be like, hey, did you wash your hands? I'm like, yeah, whatever, give me the food, I didn't care. And
they used to have chicken pox parties.
Yeah.
To get your kids, get it over with.
Yeah. Now we have herpes parties.
Yeah.
Brett and Heather Weinstein, I just got done reading their book, The Hunter-Gatherer's Guide to the 21st Century. And they had a chapter about that, how basically in a nutshell, the most optimal system to get a child to survive from childhood to adulthood actually hinders them when they're an adult. It's like it's safety. It's like you have to implement certain things that they might get injured on. Obviously, you have to use a little common sense in that, but you have to add risk in so they know how to deal with shit when it gets real. You got to let your kid fall down when the repercussions aren't so drastic as when you go out in real life when there's knives and guns and all that stuff. So, and even physics. I think earlier I had the one guy was talking about the Marcus, the person that promotes Marxism, and some of that is and you see a lot of that where people promote things they don't have any experience in the real world, because if you're involved in the real world, you get that theory and reality thing separated. You think I can do a wheelie down that hill. At that point, theory and reality are completely lined up. And when you flip over on your back and hit your head, all of a sudden they get separated. So the people that are talking about Marxism are probably people who never had actual real experience within that system. And you see that a lot with kids that spend a lot of time with screens, digital, where all their ideas that they have, they can actually accomplish in a digital world. But when they get out into the real world, it's like, well, it gets separated. I'm a machinist and fabricator by trade. So I'm constantly reminded that my thought, my theory is always going to be separated by some amount. And I think the amount of people that don't act in physical worlds or in labs, like Dr. Rhonda Patrick, I think she was just interviewed by Joe Rogan, and she was kind of a go-to for me for a long time for health. She's really good with supplements. But if you get somebody that just exists in the laboratory world, it's like they don't get that feedback. Just like when you interviewed Lustig, is like when in his earlier days, the stuff I read, he was still interacting with his patients, which you get a direct feedback from those patients of what reality is. That we tried this and this didn't work. The person comes back and tells you, it's like, no, it didn't work. Well, then it seemed like he got out of that physical world of reacting with people in reality, and then went into the politics side, which was cool that he did that, because we need change there too. But it seemed that may have been one of the things that kind of that why he thinks that certain things are like, no, you just go take that. And I think that's because those type of people aren't having those same reactions with the actual people. Just like somebody sitting in a lab somewhere researching stuff, they're not actually watching what their ideas and their findings are in the real world. Just like when you do a clinical study, it's like, well, you can do all the clinical studies you want, but we don't live in a clinical world. You know, the best diet for somebody, there was a guy who did the A to Z study, which he took all these different diets and went from the Ornish diet to the Atkins diet to a more like the zone diet. And what they found is the ones on the extreme that work good in the labs, that work good in clinical studies, when they put it into real life situations, the two extreme ones, the Atkins and the Ornish one, they all morphed into the center ones, like the zone diet that's more balanced. So it's like, well, you have to be in touch with non-clinical and non-controlled society, because we don't live in that. And that's the problem with freedom, is when you get freedom, you aren't constrained by a clinical situation where everything is controlled. So yeah, I mean, that's one of those things where you're wondering, it's like, wow, I thought this person was so intelligent. And it's like, well, yeah, their information might be coming out of a lab. But Rhonda Patrick on that show was like, oh yeah, everybody should take the vaccine. I thought, oh, my bubble was kind of burst with that. I was like, really? God, she was like one of those that I was kind of the top of the list as far as somebody to kind of go to for health advice and stuff like that. But hey, I wanted to mention to you too, you were talking about the dope sick. There's a website that my kid introduced me to, which is Soap Today, SOAP, the number 2 and DAY. But anything streaming online, you can get on there. So I watched the Dope Sick. I don't have Hulu, but that's where I watched that series. And I mean, that is a series that everybody should watch, because you can say it's a different pharmaceutical company, it's different types of drugs, but they're between the different companies, it's all the same business model. It's all the same tactics and business models. So watch that one, and you're going to see correlations, like you said, with the breakthrough. You're going to see correlations of how they manipulate people into thinking that what they have is what you need. So, and that's the one big thing I use when it comes to people saying, well, the FDA approved it. The first thing I say is, you mean the FDA approved the FDA that approved OxyContin because it wasn't addictive? Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah,
I don't trust that one.
I felt like they let the FDA off a little bit easy on that show. I felt like they made them look like, oh, we got tricked. You know, that's kind of what it made it seem like. Not that they were in cahoots with Big Pharma.
They did.
FDA gets all their funding from Big Pharma. Most of their funding comes from them.
CDC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, CDC.
You kill it. You're on a show with 3 podcast hosts, and you're the best spoken person.
Yeah.
Well, we're all tradesmen too.
Yeah, it's pretty funny actually. Once you said that, I'm like, that is funny. Like, we're supposed to be, bend over with our cracks showing, all dirty and sound like idiots.
I'm not a fucking plumber. Come on now.
It's hard to find a good plumber. I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Anytime you have issues, like, I mean, that's like one of the most common questions. They're like, "Yo, you know a good plumber?" And
Or an
but
electrician.
yeah, dude, tradesmen. I mean, we're a dying breed ourselves. It's hard to find. Well, because there's no need for masonry work or any of the stuff we do in the metaverse, where you can just
Yeah.
virtually do that shit.
Where is that anyways? I have
maybe
an
you could-
Oculus, but
yeah, maybe
I
you
haven't
could
been able to
hire,
find it yet.
hire Richard Wolf to do your electrical work, Ricky. He's probably really hands-on.
The electrician is the one that's got the really good feedback loop. Because if you think you can do something and you go against the laws of that, you get a really good feedback loop of what you can and can't do. And that's another thing with the tests. I mean, I'm fine with tests, but we don't have a good feedback loop from these tests they're giving us, like a pregnancy test. You take a pregnancy test, 9 months later, you have a really good feedback loop on whether that test worked or not. If there's another human being there, okay. But if there isn't, it failed. We don't have this with this test.
Imagine how pissed everybody would be if the pregnancy test gave as many false positives as the you know how mad people would be. It's like you're just constantly admitting to your girlfriend that you cheated on her again, and then you're wrong.
Yeah, you just came up with another thing that you can just talk to normies about, Ricky. That's brilliant.
Well, that's good.
Just another analogy you can use.
Well, and then to what Cody was saying, you take Fauci, he's the same way. Has he ever treated a patient in his life?
Not for like 30 years.
He's a bureaucrat, right?
And are you referring to my Adam, were you referring to my peanut butter metaphor that people either hate or love?
I think that's a great one, So I wasn't referring to that, but I think that's a good analogy as well. But it's just all these analogies. That's the condom analogy, all that stuff. It all works. It's all good. Just stuff that you can have in the back of your head when you have to talk to fucking retards,
Well, analogies is something extremely valuable when you're trying to explain complex systems to people. Because everybody does everyday things, walks out of the house and gets interaction with the real world. So I think the best way to communicate with people is analogies, because if you dig into the complex systems, you're going to get eyes rolling back in the head. But if you can make an analogy of something simple that somebody does every day, like the peanut butter thing, all of a sudden the light goes on.
Yeah, and I think we've been conditioned, and the reason why I think the peanut butter thing is good is because people don't even ask the most basic questions or see the most basic flaws in the logic, because a lot of these things have been conditioned in us. I think Dr. Robert Lustig, I think Rhonda Patrick, I think they are victims of conditioning of never questioning vaccine science. The fact that what's the thing? I mean, if I had $1 for every time I heard look what we did with polio, or look what we did, I'm like, well, guess what, man? Like, the history books are going to say the vaccine also saved us of COVID, and that's not fucking true. So now you should be skeptical of everything. And so I just think a lot of these people are just like, they've accepted it. It's almost like Hitler dying in Germany. Like, we've been told so often by so many people that this is something that's all accepted. This is factual, that vaccines are safe and effective, and Hitler died in Germany. That anybody who says otherwise, you think they're absolutely insane, because there's so many people who have bought into this that you just assume that there's no way that you haven't heard otherwise before. That, like, no.
A lot of people don't question it, because a lot of our conditioning comes in with invisible things. I mean, everything they try to trick us on is something invisible. I mean, how do you question the vaccines? You can't even see a virus. The average person can't see it. You don't have testing equipment to try to find it. With the whole climate change thing, it's the same thing. Everything that they use as an example is something we can't see. The hole in the ozone or the coral reef, which I can't go to, it's always something we can't see. It's like, come to my house and test my drinking water. I can't drink it. All of a sudden you can start making reality out of it. Test the water in the river. but they never do that type of stuff. Do the soil tests. One of the ones that I like that never gets brought up is the umbilical cord test they do. They've been doing that for a long time, but they never bring it up. When I first saw it, it was like 174 different chemicals. They test for, I think, 108 or 480, and it used to be at 174, and I think now it's over 200. They take it at an umbilical cord. As soon as that kid's introduced into the world, it already has 200 chemicals in it that are carcinogenic or damaging in some way. But the conditioning is easy for the other stuff for them because it's invisible. We have no way to test it. You know, other than actually us going out and actually testing ourselves, like getting something, playing in the dirt. But, you know, people are just, you know, one of the things that people kind of criticize other people for is that they value safety over freedom. And I get that. I get the criticism, but safety is actually the number one thing. Because if you're living in the middle of a war zone, how much freedom you got? You know what I mean? Humans really do need a certain level of safety to practice freedom. And I mean, that should be what should be explained to people. But when people go to the safety point, I get that. But it's like, you know, safety should be the number one thing, but only to the point where you can express freedom. Anything past that is, you know, is suppressing everything you can do in your life. So.
Yeah, I got to go soon. Cody, where can we all find your podcast?
I ain't got one. I should. Yeah.
Well, if you need help starting one, hit one of us up because we'll be more than happy to help you out.
Cool.
Oh yeah,
For sure.
Appreciate that.
Well, are you on any social media platforms or anything that you want to plug?
I kind of bailed on a lot of that. You know, I'm on Telegram. I follow yours on Telegram. I've been trying to kind of find alternatives, and I understand why certain people stayed on the other ones. And at times I kind of regretted it, but I think one of the things that put me over the edge was so a lot of the pedophilia stuff that I found out where a lot of the platforms the groups were actually bringing it to their attention and they didn't do anything about it. And it was just like, I just wiped out all my accounts, but I should get into the game because one of my issues is in the general population, I get the eyes rolling back into the head. Cause if you go out to 100 people, a lot of people aren't interested in finding out truth. And I guess that's why I listen to podcasts 6 to 10 hours a day is because it's a group. It's a group that is concentrated with people who are trying to find out the truth, even if it stings and it hurts.
Well, even Michael from the On Tyranny podcast, I just had him on. He's from Greece. And he hit me up, and I get this often from guests where they're like, "Oh, thank you so much for the conversation." It reminds me that I'm not going crazy, and because in Greece, it's just one of those countries, like many of the European countries, where it's hard to find like-minded people. And if you guys haven't listened to his podcast, the On Tyranny podcast, it's a phenomenal podcast. He's a super interesting guy, wicked well-read and well-spoken, and just really, I love hearing people that kind of like provoke just different ideas, because sometimes I get worried that I'm listening to the same people too often, that I'm like, I'm not getting a different, you know, light shine on the things, which I think is necessary and important. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the other thing. Before I wind down, I'm going to let Sean and Adam plug what they're doing and all that stuff. Greg from the Higher Side Chats started it's kind of like the Freedom Cells project thing where you can meet up with other people, and he hit me up, and I think he hit up a bunch of people in the alternative media community that he's friends with about how he created a website where you can put in events and you can, you know, basically hang out with people and start these little events where you get groups of like-minded people together. And he's like, hey, if any of your fans want to use it, they can use it for their events. So if anybody wants to do a Ripple Effect podcast, you know, get together, or Adam gets red pilled, or nowhere to go but up meet and greet, or whatever you want to call it, you know, he's more than happy to let people use his website that he just, and I looked at it. I haven't used it yet, but he built it just for this purpose, to get people together. And so he doesn't care, you know, if it's a Higher Side Chat event or event for another podcast in the community. He's just happy to give people a platform where they can gather people and get together and find. And the nice thing about getting together with people locally is that you also talk about local issues and how you can do things locally and affect things in a positive way locally. So I think that's awesome of Greg to be open to people using his platform. But Adam, Sean, you guys want to plug your shows, let people know where they can get you got your shows, and also anything that you might have coming up?
Yeah, I'll go. Deborah Gets Red Pilled on all the podcast catchers. We just got added to Alt Media United, so you can find us there. We are on Twitter, we're on Instagram, and we have a Telegram chat. So come and hang out in the Telegram. We're not reposting articles about how Fauci sucks or about stats about what's really going on, because we all know that shit. But we're posting stuff about gardening and raising animals and getting out of the city and fermenting stuff and doing all that. So it's solutionary based. So we'd love to have everybody there, and we'd love to have you come check out all 3 of our shows on the RSS feed. Deborah Gets Red Pilled. And yeah, thanks for having us, Ricky.
You say you're on, is that a Telegram group?
What's that? Yeah, we have a Telegram chat.
What's it called?
It's Deborah Gets Red Pilled.
Okay, I'll look it up.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm on a lot of different Telegram groups. Peter McCullough is really active on his Telegram group.
Yeah, Peter. Yeah, I'm in so many too that I actually have a hard time keeping up, to be honest. But the Ripple Effect podcast one, it's like the one that I have to feel necessary to check and stay connected with those people. But yeah, I mean, it's almost going to get to a point where it's like all social media platforms where it's going to be hard to just keep up with everything. But Sean, you want to let people know where they can get your podcasts and all that stuff?
Yeah, nowhere to go but up. On all the platforms, all the different, iTunes, Spotify, all these places, YouTube. I'm on Odyssey now, so there's some things I'll put on YouTube, and all the other controversial shit will go on Odyssey.
So all the good stuff will be on Odyssey. Yeah, and if you want to send me well, actually, I know your links. I'll put the links in the show description to the Telegram and your podcasts and stuff like that. Do you have a website yet, Adam, or no?
Not yet.
Not yet. Yeah, I've been doing this for forever, and I literally just got a website last year, sometime late last year, because I'm like, everybody listens to it on their phones on an app. I'm like, what do I care if I have a website or not? But it is nice, especially like as you branch out and have different channels and different places where they can connect with you, to have like a website where they can find all that stuff is kind of nice. But
yeah, I think I have unlimited bandwidth thing on Podomatic. I think they'll like help you make one on there, so I might try that out.
Yeah, they're awesome, man. I know that there's cheaper options out there, but my merch store, I got hooked up through Podomatic because they work with a company called What For Apparel. I don't know. So like if you work with them, they'll give you like a deal or whatever, or help you get started with the merch store. Same thing with I think they use Weebly or whatever it's called.
Yeah, Weebly is what you get if you have like a high the unlimited package. They give you that one.
Yeah,
they just gave me 80% off for the whole year. I got the whole year for like $80.
Yeah, they do amazing sales. And I'll tell you, like, any time throughout, like, I've been doing this since 2013. Anytime I've had issues, they've been really good with helping out. They've never once censored me at all. When I was getting censored on iTunes for Del Bigtree and Mickey Willis, like, they try to help out, and honestly, they were getting a bullshit response from iTunes, so they just kind of forwarded the bullshit response, which I don't think was what was going on. It wasn't a tech issue, but they try to help out as much as they can, so they're awesome. But I do have to talk to them about the Spotify thing, because Tom, he is right on Spotify for some reason. Episode 1 is first, and then goes in the other direction, and I don't know how to change that, or why only my episode or my podcast is like that, but I'll have to fix that, because that probably is super annoying. But thanks, guys. I really appreciate your time. Hopefully we all hang out again. I'm gonna do another one this Saturday. I was hoping to do one or Sunday, because I wanted Adam to be able to make it, but he made this one. So now I'm just gonna do one just for the fuck of it. I'm just gonna
maybe I'll stop in on that one too.
Awesome. Well, hey, enjoy the rest of your night, guys. Thanks again for taking time. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure we'll talk again in the near future. And Cody, start a podcast.
Thanks. Take
Thanks,
care,
guys.
guys.
See ya.
Bye.